Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this house here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen, Amen, Namaste.
Oath or affirmation, announcements by the Speaker.
Honourable members, I have received communication from Ms. Marlene MacDonald, MP, member for Port of Spain South, who has requested leave of absence from today's sitting of the House. The leave which the member seeks is granted.
Bills brought from the Senate. On the supplemental order paper, the Animal Diseases and Importation Amendment Bill 2019, in the name of the Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries. Petitions, papers.
The Deputy Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay paper number 1, the notification of Her Excellency, the President, in respect of the nomination of Mr. Courtney McNish for appointment as a member of the Police Service Commission. Thank you.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following papers. The ministerial response of the Ministry of Health to the 15th report of the Joint Select Committee on Human Rights, Equality and Diversity on the current provisions for the education of children who require special education programs and services in public, primary and secondary schools. Papers 3 to 5, the responses to the 13th report of the Joint Select Committee on Social Services and Public Administration on an inquiry into the prevalence of teenage pregnancy and the state's capacity to minimize the occurrence of teenage pregnancy and provide services and assistance to teenage parents. These responses are from the Ministries of Health, Social Development and Family Services, and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Paper number 6, the ministerial response of the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government to the 12th report of the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises on an inquiry to assess the performance of the Community-Based Environmental Protection and Enhancement Program and its operations. Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker.
The Minister of Rural Development and Local Government.
On behalf of the Minister of Rural Development and Local Government, I have the honor to lay paper number 7, the administrative report of the Arima Borough Corporation for the period 2018 to 2019. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I have the honor to lay the annual report and audited financial statements of the First Citizens Depository Services Limited for the year ended September 30th, 2019. I beg to move that paper 8 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee.
Honourable members, the question is that paper number 8 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Member for Tobago East.
On behalf of the member for Tobago East, I have the honor to lay paper number 9, the delegation report of the Caribbean stakeholder meeting ahead of the 25th anniversary of the adoption of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action held in Barbados on February 10th to 11th, 2020. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Reports from committees, Prime Minister's questions, urgent questions.
Member for Couva South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Public Utilities. Could the Minister confirm how many employees of the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission exhibiting flu-like symptoms have been sent to medical institutions for COVID-19 testing?
The Minister of Public Utilities.
Speaker. Madam Speaker, as is well known to all, this nation collectively adopts sensible and working measures to minimize the spread of COVID-19. And I'm also advised that the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission have put systems in place in order to ensure that all mechanisms consistent with the recommendations of the Ministry of Health to protect all of its employees and customers. They have ensured as well the reliability and security of the essential service that it is maintained. Protocols have been put in place as well to ensure that the health and safety of employees and customers are safeguarded. I wish to assure the population that TNTEC will continue to apply that duty of care in keeping with the standards set and the protocols set by the Ministry of Health in this matter. With respect to the number of employees at the TNTEC exhibiting flu-like symptoms who have been sent to medical institutions for COVID-19 testing, I'm advised that there was one employee from the jointer crew who was tested on May 17, 2020. He was feeling unwell the day before, and his results are pending. On May the 19th, 2020, all other 5 employees of that crew were sent to the Mount Hope Health Facility. They were not tested, but were given sick leave pending the results consistent with that employee who was tested on May 17th. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Supplemental, member for Couva South.
Minister, could you confirm reports that TNTEC prematurely brought back out workers or brought workers out which violated the agreement they had with the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, which was clearly defined in a meeting with the said workers' representatives on the 25th of March 2020?
I will not allow that as a supplemental question based on the question originally asked and the response. Member for Couva North.
Madam Speaker, to the Minister of Education, in light of recent appeals made by Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association to the government, could the Minister state whether he will seriously reconsider the rescheduling of the CSEC examinations from July 2020 to some other date agreed upon by the various stakeholders involved in the educational system?
The Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this question is predicated on the notion that the Minister of Education can unilaterally reschedule the CSEC exams. Madam Speaker, CXC is a regional examination body which has the direct responsibility of administering the CSEC and the CAPE exams. On May the 8th, 2020, the 6th Special Emergency Meeting of the Council of Human and Social Development, COSHUD, Education, was held. This was a virtual meeting and was attended by the Ministers of Education of the region. One of the areas of discussion was CXC administration of regional examinations in 2020 due to the impact of COVID-19. The meeting decided that the CSEC and CAPE examinations be held in July 2020. This was a decision of the regional ministers of education. Any change can only be effected if the ministers of education collectively decide on any change. I have been in communication with Minister of Education Michael Brown of Antigua, who chaired the meeting on May the 8th, and I was told that all ministers of education among the region are in support of the examination being held in July. Thank you very much.
Madam Speaker, Mr. Minister, based on what you have just informed this House, have you held the appropriate consultation with stakeholders? And based on the consultation with stakeholders, are you satisfied that all the school-based assignments for students in Trinidad and Tobago have been evaluated and their marks computed and so on, to give the student a sense of comfort to sit the exam in July of 2020?
I will not allow that as a supplemental question based on the original question and the response. Member for Oropuch West.
With respect to the 32 Venezuelan nationals who were rescued and taken to the Coast Guard post at Cedros, could the minister state whether these Coast Guard officers will be held in quarantine for the prescribed 2-week period in light of one of them displaying flu-like symptoms?
Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this question, as posed inadvertently, not deliberately, has a degree of mischief. If one reads the second part of the question, whether these Coast Guard officers will be held in quarantine for the prescribed 2-week period in light of one of them, that is the Coast Guard officers displaying flu-like symptoms. That is the inadvertent mischief. So it's based on a false premise. Why? Because I'm told by the Chief Medical Officer, who was in contact with the medical personnel of the Coast Guard, that no Coast Guard personnel displayed flu-like symptoms. So that's the inadvertent mischief, not deliberate. Because one gets the impression from the question, somebody comes in contact with 32 people and you suddenly develop flu-like symptoms. It doesn't work that way. Are they in quarantine? The answer is yes. They are in quarantine under the authority of the Chief Medical Officer with his powers under the Quarantine Act and under the direct care of the Coast Guard medical personnel at a facility designated by the Coast Guard, Coast Guard's medical personnel. So yes, they are in quarantine, but no one of the Coast Guard staff displayed flu-like symptoms. So I thank you for the question.
Supplemental. Member for Couva North.
No, Oropuch West. Second one. To number 4.
Member for Oropuch West.
Thank you. To the Minister of National Security, considering that 71 countries are making arrangements to bring home their nationals from the Royal Caribbean Cruise Line, could the minister state whether the respective 345 Trinidad and Tobago nationals abroad will be brought back to their homeland?
Minister of National Security.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as was stated earlier today, it is coming to our attention that there may be nationals of Trinidad and Tobago in different numbers on various cruise ships, in different locations throughout the Caribbean and elsewhere. Previously, the official request for exemptions for entry by our nationals on cruise ships had been provided to the government by agents of the cruise ship companies as a collective, with the total request exceeding 430 nationals. We have not been provided with breakdowns per cruise ship and the particulars of where these various cruise ships are located. We have been making attempts to locate, for example, 6 nationals on one cruise ship said to be nearby. This task has been challenging as we do not have individual applications from these 6, but rather we have a blanket application on behalf of 430 nationals. The government, Madam Speaker, has been managing the public health care system and balancing the entry of nationals based in great measure on the capacity of our public health care system to handle COVID-19 cases without being overwhelmed. exemptions for the entry of nationals into Trinidad and Tobago have been granted, consistent with ensuring that we can manage the numbers being quarantined by the state to ensure the continued protection of the population of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, I repeat, we are going to permit the entry of our nationals on these various cruise ships by establishing a schedule which allows us to manage their return consistent with our resources to protect them and the population. Today, I met with the Minister of Health and the Chief Medical Officer, and I also had other conversations with other officers involved, and we are discussing how the entry of these nationals, our nationals, on these cruise ships can be scheduled. We are also managing the return of close to 275 students whom the government is working on bringing back to Trinidad and Tobago from Barbados and Jamaica. Madam Speaker, that is how we are managing it.
Member for Oropouche West.
Yeah. Honourable Minister, you said there will be a schedule. What criteria would you use to determine who stays and who goes?
Madam Speaker, at absolutely no point in time did I indicate anyone would be staying anywhere. And let me state it here categorically and clearly, with a great degree of clarity. None of our nationals on cruise ships are not going to be permitted to re-enter Trinidad and Tobago. Their re-entry, it being over 430 that we are aware of at this stage, will be worked out in a schedule that our public health system can accommodate. We are also going to be speaking with the cruise ship companies to work out what role they will play, how they will participate in ensuring the safe entry of our nationals back into Trinidad and Tobago.
Supplemental member.
Honourable Minister, I'm not sure if I heard you clearly. You said none of the nationals will be brought back. Is that what you said? Or is it that there would be a breach of their constitutional rights not to return them to Trinidad?
Madam Speaker.
Just 1 minute. Which is the question?
I'm asking the first part and follow up. Is it...
Ma'am.
Okay, ma'am.
Member, you're entitled to one question at a time.
Would there be a breach of the nationals' constitutional rights to prevent them from returning to Trinidad?
Once again, I repeat exactly as I said a short while ago and said before that. It is obvious, I'll add this, it is obvious that the member wants to create a furor and mischief. All of our nationals on cruise ships, all of our nationals, our meaning Trinidad and Tobago's nationals who are currently on cruise ships, will be allowed re-entry into Trinidad and Tobago on a scheduled basis.
I'm sure all members are quite familiar now with the standing orders, and particularly for urgent questions, the member who's asked the question first has the right to the supplementals, and unless they fail to utilize it, then other members can ask. Member for Cuba North.
To the Minister of National Security, could the Minister state his government's policy with regard to facilitating in any way the passage of the Iranian-flagged ships carrying petroleum products to Venezuela?
Minister of National Security.
Madam Speaker, once again, a narrative is born amongst the Trinidad and Tobago UNC opposition to misrepresent the country's foreign policy to the world. A deliberate narrative born in the bowels of the UNC opposition to misrepresent this country's foreign policy to the world. Exactly as the member has just said, is being said in Venezuela by the Venezuelan opposition, coming directly from the UNC opposition in Trinidad and Tobago. The UNC continues, opposition continues to bolster their self-born narrative, trying to incite US sanctions against Trinidad and Tobago. It was in this House, Madam Speaker, on the 8th of March, 2019.
Members, the Minister is entitled to answer the question.
It is in this House, Madam Speaker, on the 8th of March 2019, this government adopted a United Nations Security Council resolution and adopted under the Economic Sanctions Act 1805 a resolution with respect to the Islamic Republic of Iran. So I will put it very, very clearly on the record that this government will be doing absolutely nothing to facilitate in any way the passage of any Iranian flag ships carrying petroleum products to Venezuela. And Madam Speaker, it is quite wrong, especially for those in this parliament, to give this erroneous impression that we do not comply with UN resolutions and sanctions, which we do, and this government continues to abide by UN resolutions. And we will not fall prey. We will not fall prey to the UNC opposition call for sanctions against Trinidad and Tobago.
Honourable members, the time for urgent questions is now spent. Members will be well aware it's 15 minutes.
Questions on notice, questions for oral answer.
Leader of the House.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there is one question on notice, and we will be answering that question.
Member for Naparima.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Question number 67 to the Minister of Social Development and Family Services.
Minister of Social Development and Family Services.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, for clarity, I wish to inform the House that the salary relief grant is being administered by the Ministry of Finance in collaboration with the National Insurance Board of Trinidad and Tobago for citizens and permanent residents who have suffered involuntary termination or suspension of income from March 19, 2020, as a result of the COVID-19 health and safety measures. It is to be noted that March 19, 2020 is the date on which the first public health novel coronavirus 2019 NCOV regulations were published. The salary relief grant is specific in the first instance to workers in certain types of businesses, such as bars and restaurants. Workers in other businesses affected by the subsequent novel coronavirus regulations are also under consideration. In this context, the Ministry of Finance has advised that as at May 21st, 2020, 15,333 salary relief grants were paid for a total value of $21.17 million. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services has responsibility for protecting the most vulnerable in our society and has a key role to play in ensuring that the welfare of its thousands of existing clients, in addition to persons who have been impacted by the shock of the pandemic and its accompanying measures, are addressed. Accordingly, immediate action was taken to address the needs of existing clients and to introduce the COVID-19 social support grants, food, income, and rental for citizens and permanent residents who were retrenched, terminated, or experienced reduced income in March 2020. Madam Speaker, as it relates to the persons who had permanent food cards, the first action that was taken was a top-up to all 25,101 households already in receipt of food support in the sum of $17,144,100. Food support was also provided to 2,818 persons who had applied for the senior citizens pension but whose applications had not yet been finalized, and that was in the sum of $12,681,000. And to 488 persons who had applied for the disability assistance grant and had not yet been approved, and that was in the sum of $1,464,000. Madam Speaker, emergency food support was also provided to 1,400 needy households throughout Trinidad in the form of a hamper in collaboration with the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government. The ministry is also partnering with the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries to provide 30,000 market boxes to needy persons in communities, comprising $250 worth of fresh produce and 2 chickens and a $250 grocery voucher. This is being undertaken in collaboration with the MP's offices, and already more than 5,000 households have benefited. The overall cost of this initiative is $15 million. The faith-based organizations have also been provided with a grant to allow them to provide food support to families residing in their communities, and this is expected to be over a 3-month period at a cost of $30 million. The Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government has also received the sum of $30 million for use in the 14 corporations. Madam Speaker, with regard to the grants, that is to say, the food card and the public assistance that have been applied for by citizens, to date, 11,335 persons have received their grants, and this is at a total of $735,180. As it relates specifically to the rental assistance grant, we have thus far received 1,012 applications, and 657 have been processed for payment. 52 have been rejected because we have noticed and detected several anomalies suggesting attempts to commit fraud. And in light of this, the ministry implemented a more robust system to validate all requests for rental assistance. Madam Speaker, with regard to Part B of the question, which is the temporary food support card, issued to families with children on the school feeding program, food support cards were provided to 20,497 families with a child or children registered with the school feeding program, and to date, the cost of that is $31,360,410. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Supplemental, member for Naparima.
Madam Speaker, with respect to the salary relief grants, could the minister tell us how many, in the estimation, would have qualified in Trinidad and Tobago, given that the workforce is over 300,000 persons, and the fact that only 15,333 have been processed and paid?
Madam Speaker, the issue is not the qualification. We have indicated what the mechanism for qualification is. And that mechanism is, first of all, the person has to be on the NIS system, the person has to be a citizen or permanent resident, and more than that, the person would have had to suffer involuntary termination or suspension of income from March 19th, 2020. Those are the qualifications, Madam Speaker.
Supplemental, member for Naparima.
Rental assistance grants. Is the minister satisfied that with 1,012 applications, that sufficient publicity was given to this, because this cannot represent the number of people in need of rental assistance support?
Minister.
Madam Speaker, this was publicized on the television, on the newspapers, in the regional corporations, at the police stations, on social media, and we use every form of a mechanism for giving notice of this grant. And Madam Speaker, let me say that persons have applied thus far we have received 1,012 applications. We do believe that there has been sufficient notice given to all of the members of the public. And I'm sure that what we are seeing here is the first set of applications that have come in. And Madam Speaker, I'm sure my friend knows that this is an ongoing program.
Supplemental, member for Naparima.
Madam Speaker, in Naparima, is the minister aware that in Naparima constituency, there are close to 3,000 students who are on the school feeding program, and only less than 500 or less than 600 have received support from the government of Trinidad and Tobago. So it is 600 out of 3,000. Is this satisfactory?
Member for Naparima, I'm not certain. What is your question? You're entitled to one question.
The question is the minister satisfied that 600 school feeding cards are satisfactory, given the fact that in Naparima, one constituency, there are 3,000 students on the school feeding program, and only 500 received cards.
Again, I'm lost in what the question is. You have 15 seconds to ask.
The question is 500 cards to satisfy 3,000 students on the school feeding program. Are you satisfied that that is meeting the needs?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the issue is twofold. The list is a list of students who are registered on the school feeding program to receive the school feeding through the Ministry of Education. The second thing is that some of the persons who have their children on the school feeding program are already in receipt of a permanent food card. And as a consequence of that, in addition to that, several of the children who are on school feeding are from one household. In many instances, it is 2 or more children on the school feeding. As a consequence of all of that information, Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services examined the list, and we thought that 500 food cards was fair, and each member of Parliament got the same amount. The other issue, though, Madam Speaker, is we have indicated that in the event that there may be families who are not captured by the food card, we have provided the market box hampers, which are of a value of $250 with a food card or a grocery voucher of $250. So in the event, the family gets $500 worth of food.
Supplemental, member for Napoli.
Given the understatement of numbers of people who have access to this grant, the minister will agree that it has not touched the level of poverty in Trinidad and Tobago, and it is a PR exercise.
Again, member, the question, because 1 minute, your original question covers 3 subsets. Please let us know what you're asking.
A PR exercise, or it is really touching the needs of the society?
Minister.
Madam Speaker, as far as I am concerned, and as far as the government of Dr. Keith Rowley is concerned, this is touching the needs of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And Madam Speaker, we have made sure that we have created not just a social safety net, but a sieve, Madam Speaker, because we have used the MP's offices, we have used the market boxes, we have used the food cards, we have used the permanent food cards, we have used the income support, we have used the salary relief grant, we have used several other types of assistance to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker. And as a consequence of this, also at this point, we have also used the faith-based organizations. So, Madam Speaker, we are of the firm view that this is touching and reaching the majority of persons who are in need in Trinidad and Tobago.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the House on definite matters of urgent public importance, statements by ministers, personal explanations, introduction of bills, motions relating to the business or sittings of the House and moved by a minister, public business, private business, motions.
Members are reminded that the COVID rules apply in terms of speaking time. Member for Caroni Central.
Madam Speaker, our party leader and leader of the opposition, the Honorable Kamala Prasad Bisesa, instructed me to file this motion, and I have willingly complied. I therefore now read this motion standing in my name. Whereas the government is bungling the management of the human aspect of the COVID-19 crisis to the distress of citizens, a large number of whom is without work and struggle to put food on the table. And whereas the emergency economic measures put in place to support businesses are not working and are having a devastating effect on general commerce, especially small, medium, and micro businesses. And whereas citizens are fearful for their future and see no hope of recovery and prosperity under this government post-COVID-19, especially given the state of the oil and gas sector, the loss of business confidence, little investment, continuous decline, and lack of growth. Be it resolved that this House agree that the government should favorably consider the leader of the opposition's proposals to the Prime Minister of an economic master plan, and be it further resolved that this House agree that the government should facilitate a genuine bipartisan collaboration towards a national policy for recovery and growth in Trinidad and Tobago. I filed this motion in good faith on May 9th, 2020, Madam Speaker, but since then, events have overtaken us. As of today, May 22nd, 2020, Robert Lee Hunt is no longer Minister of Public Utilities and no longer Vice Chair of the Roadmap Committee. The controversial visit of Madam Delcy Rodriguez, Vice President of Venezuela, and her entourage, and the equally controversial sale of the fuel by Paria Limited, which have become matters of international speculation and controversy, and which have led to disputed statements by the Prime Minister and Minister of National Security, have made the government weak at the knees. Thirdly, given the now likely inevitable imminent call of the 2020 elections, the credibility of any document produced by the Roadmap Committee as a non-partisan, stakeholder-guided document of national consensus has been severely undermined and can be hotly contested. So the government, by its own reckless actions, has served to undermine any good intention it may have had and have rendered any proposal for a recovery plan by members opposite suspect. This might have been avoided, Madam Speaker, had the Prime Minister heeded the call on March 16, 2020, of the Honorable Leader of the Opposition to establish a bipartisan committee, which he expanded to include a range of other stakeholders in business, economy, and society, in her submission at a meeting with the Prime Minister on March 20th, 2020. Instead, what the Prime Minister did on April 16 was to appoint a roadmap committee of selected individuals, ignoring the opposition leader entirely. In hindsight, I believe that even if the government had acceded to the proposal of the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, current events would have overtaken us anyway, making the whole thing hollow. The fact is that where we find ourselves today makes it very difficult for the government to exercise any moral authority whatsoever in anything. Where we find ourselves today makes it difficult for the government to summon any credibility, for them to elicit any receptivity from the population, or to engender any trust from the vast majority of citizens. The truth is that the government finds itself between a rock and a hard place because of the difficulty of establishing truthfulness surrounding the vital details of the fateful meeting with Vice President Delcy Rodriguez on March 27th, and because of the controversy about the ultimate intended destination of 150,000 barrels of fuel purchased by a Wilmer Ruperty company from Paria Trading Company. What we are dealing with in this motion, therefore, Madam Speaker, focusing on the last two paragraphs, is the issue of legitimizing a national agenda or a national plan for Trinidad and Tobago that meets with public favor and widespread acceptance in the midst of an unprecedented crisis of health and economy, but also a crisis of confidence in the government. In the best of times, forging a national agenda can be problematic. Narrow partisan interests often encourage dissonance and discord, no matter what country. So the issue of crafting public policy to support a national plan or a national agenda which can gain cross-partisan support, the buy-in of stakeholders and the approval of the masses can be a complex one even in the best of times. In Trinidad and Tobago, the PNM has had 30 consecutive years of government from 1956. The opposition in various forms has had sporadic 5-year stints after that, but so too has the PNM in the post-1986 period. On September 7, 2020, the Keith Rowley government will have had 5 years in office. They have been dread years. 18 consecutive quarters of economic decline up to December 2019. 4.5 years of recession yielding a depression. A recession is measured in quarters. 3 or 4 quarters of decline signal a recession. We had 18 consecutive quarters of decline. A depression is measured in years. Up to December 2019, we have had 4.5 consecutive years of depression. Business knew it, the middle class felt it, the poor and the vulnerable lived it and tried to survive it. We also ran up during that time 101.3 billion debt, according to the Central Bank report of January 2020, and the exchequer account was overdrawn by 41+ billion, according to the Auditor General. All of this was pre-COVID. The pre-COVID normal was horrible and undesirable. And then came COVID-19, and every vulnerability was suddenly exposed. It is in this context that the Honorable Leader of the Opposition wrote to the Honorable Prime Minister as we entered an uncertain period of lockdown in which risk had to be managed, survival had to be ensured, recovery had to be planned for, and the strategic actions had to be initiated to cope with the different economic and social environment than anyone had envisaged 1 year ago. And remember, Madam Speaker, the pre-COVID economic depression was real. And with COVID-19, the crisis was certain to deepen, and no one knew when the crisis would end. The letter of the opposition leader to the Prime Minister of March 16th was a very thoughtful letter, which took into account the partisan and combative nature of Trinidad and Tobago politics, but which pointed out that the two leaders had enough knowledge and experience to rise above the differences and to meet the crisis together head-on in the best interest of Trinidad and Tobago. When the Prime Minister met with the leader of the opposition and her team on April 20th, the leader of the opposition handed the Prime Minister a 7-page memorandum outlining actions the opposition is taking in the crisis, highlighting the opposition's concerns such as cost and sources of government funding, and the issues of testing and the adequacy of supply of equipment. But the leader also highlighted key elements of the opposition proposals under 5 pillars: protecting the vulnerable, protecting the economy, protecting our citizens' social net and standard of living, ensuring that our medical response follows international best practice, rebuilding our future as we ease out of the crisis. In concluding her submission, Mrs. Bisesa, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, stated, and I quote from her, "In this time of crisis, our nation needs to stand united. We have seen around the world where those on opposite sides have come together to work in the best interests of their citizens, countries, and the global well-being. We in the opposition stand ready, willing, and able to assist with the national effort to ensure our citizens' safety and health are protected," close quote. This was March 16th, when the Prime Minister announced his carefully selected team on April 20th. Glaringly absent from the team were university economists, except for Professor Carl Theodore, and opposition UNC members who occupy all the seats in Parliament not occupied by the government. And so a great opportunity for uniting government, opposition, and key stakeholders behind a truly national policy which can be driven by either political party in the broad national interest in a decidedly non-partisan way has been missed and squandered. After all, this is an election year, and anyone can win. We will have a new government after elections. Perhaps our system, imitative of the British parliamentary model, is too combative and too constraining. Perhaps our party system, geared towards popular support, is too rooted in loyal communities, be they tribal, ethnic, or ideological, and linked as it is to rewards and patronage aligned to these. For the issue of political choices to be truly free, based on ideas, options, and vision for the future from the point of view of the citizen. But maybe also from the point of view of a political party which has achieved political power, and that means any party, it becomes too difficult to rally citizens behind a national vision when alignment in a campaign before election results is generally decidedly partisan and sometimes mindlessly so. It is this that makes legitimization of a national plan or agenda so very difficult to achieve. And it is this issue on the eve of an election that the Honorable Leader of the Opposition sought to address. So many hearts and minds went into Vision 2020, but the opposition was not included from the beginning, and so when the end came, there was no support from the Pandey-led opposition at the time. There were other issues which I need not address here, but the main thing to be understood was that Vision 2020, which claimed to represent a national vision, was not bipartisan in conception, nor in input, nor in buy-in. And so it was also with our first 5-year plan in the early independence period, in which agriculture had a major role. And all the 5-year plans after that derived from manifestos. And then the jolt of the 1970 revolt and the plans for national reconstruction after 1970, and party manifestos and policy derived from these as the norm thereafter. In 2010, the People's Partnership had a manifesto. Our government's medium-term policy framework derived from that. And the medium-term policy was measured via an established national performance framework. A national physical development plan was laid in Parliament after extensive consultation. Indeed, all documents just mentioned were duly laid in Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. And when we left a draft of Action 2015 to 2025 in the Ministry of Planning. Vision 2030, unfortunately, never made it to consciousness. So in Trinidad and Tobago, we have never really had a fully endorsed national plan which leads development and has broad-based buy-in across sectors and different segments which must work together to build a nation. There are some thoughtful books and articles written on why some nations succeed and why others fail. There are all kinds of models and examples. There are articles and books on successful nations that are small. The COVID-19 crisis has shown how meaningless are some of the previous assessments. For instance, the OECD graduated Trinidad and Tobago to developed status about 5 years ago. West Indian countries are ranked high in human development terms and are regarded generally as high income or middle income. But meaningful development remain elusive, and self-sufficiency and sustainability nowhere in sight. Food production in the context of food security is weak everywhere in the region, except Guyana. All countries are dependent on one export. In most cases, imports incur high costs that cannot be met by export gains. The base of production, as well as opportunities for export, are narrow. No matter how strong an individual economy may seem at any time with oil or with tourism, all these countries in the Caribbean are fragile. The middle class is shaky, working class poor, poverty is persistent, productivity is low, competitiveness is weak, IC systems are unintegrated, not up to mark, and applied innovation virtually absent, even in the face of so much spontaneous creativity in the region. Such vulnerabilities and deficiencies have been ruthlessly exposed by COVID-19. So how are some countries successful? What do they do? What really makes the difference? When one summarizes what those who seem to know are saying, one can identify a few critical success factors. For instance, a strategic focus consisting of vision and mission and leadership and management, and the wherewithal to think things through collaboratively. Then there are the people issues, competence, capacity, quality. Then there's the management of operations, the processes, the work ethic, seeing things through to results. Then there's the communication aspect to sell and market ideas and concepts so that things can percolate and be drilled down. And then there are the resources, including finance, assets, facilities, equipment, which are all necessary to get the job done. Then there's the effective management of risk to prepare for the unexpected. And then you have to review things along the way as you go along, learn from achievements as well as mistakes, and share the learnings to continue to improve. That is how successful companies do it. That is how successful countries do it. It takes leadership, structure, system, and care. But a country is not a company. It is more, and it is significantly more complex and complicated. The way you organize land, labor, and capital and get them to work coherently is important. The way you unleash entrepreneurship, the way you deploy education, these are critical. The use of central power in relation to other poles and points of power is vital. The structure of the society and the way these structures relate are also important, but even more important is the way incentives are created and deployed to help society to transform itself. Certain questions arise. Should the economy be incentivized to innovate? How do you get an efficient and effective tax collection system to sustain revenue? How do you ensure good government and efficient and effective governance? What must one do to create a competitive business environment? How do you create a framework conducive to continuous social progress? This is what one knowledgeable person had to say about good government, and I quote, "An effective government invests in people, advances opportunities for shared prosperity, raises the revenues needed to support the public structures that support inclusive economic growth." Actually, that sounds like the People's Partnership at work during 2010-2015. So it takes structure, infrastructure, and effective governance? And what about the people, society, and culture? What are the key ingredients? When experts look at successful societies, they find that the attitude of the people molded for many years by education and culture are important. The value of ethics as a basic principle of culture and habit of governance, strong sense of individual and group responsibility, simple things like punctuality, respect for laws and rules, love of work, the effort to save and invest, the desire and the will to be productive. So values, cultural norms, ethos are vital ingredients in ensuring socio-economic and political success in a country. In the National Economic Transformation Plan of the United National Congress, these are some of the ideas and plans which we consider important. Creating a food-secure nation, infrastructure to connect people, places, and communities, creative industries to forge national identity while recognizing and supporting diversity, a meaningful tourism industry, renewable energy, a digital economy as a platform for the fourth industrial revolution, recycling as a driving concept, biotechnology, energy sector rationalization and strengthening, jobs and skills through education and training, human development, foreign policy to anchor and reposition our society. And we have 12 projects which the political leader often speaks about. Regionally,
Member for Caroni,
yes.
Central, your speaking time is now ended.
Is what? No, that could not be, ma'am.
He has 20 minutes.
That's what I thought.
Member for Caroni, Central, and all members. The motion which was moved and adopted for the changing of the speaking time was 20 minutes.
No, the first speaker has 30 minutes, ma'am. Yes,
Member for Caroni Central, I am certain that you don't mean that. Just let me check with you. I stand corrected. I'll give you 10 more minutes from here because I stopped you at 20 minutes.
Stop, ma'am.
So 10 minutes from now will be 2:38:26.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So I was saying we have 12 additional projects. And the key to all of these are 5 guiding principles: people-centered development, emphasis on private sector driving growth and development, resilience, economic reforms with a human face, local content, promoting environmental stewardship. It is a clear plan to move away from energy overdependence, a restructuring of the economy for greater self-sufficiency and economic diversification, and a movement toward renewable industries, research-driven, information technology-driven, science, technology, and innovation-propelled industries. We have a plan for the country post-COVID, and the political leaders shared that plan with the government and presented elements in it in the last budget in September 2019. But a plan like this to restructure the Trinidad and Tobago economy and to build out a new one will only be possible if we, first of all, manage well the survival phase of COVID, which we are now in. It is in this survival phase, an emergency phase, where relief measures are not reaching the people that citizens reel in distress. It is in this survival period when businesses have not received a cent of government support yet that the threat of closures loom, And in particular, there are 17,000 small and medium businesses facing a bleak future. In the malls today, closures are the norm. And it is because a light at the end of the tunnel is not visible amidst the economic turmoil outside and in the country itself that people are becoming more fearful. Let us start with Caroni Central constituency. The Ministry of Social Development gave me 500 food cards to give out in Caroni Central. I gave them all out, but there are 800 plus more families who qualify on the basis of children in the school feeding program who have not received any food card from us. It is difficult to say how many of these might be receiving some other form of benefit or have received nothing at all. I got 50 hampers from the ministry. With private support, I was able to get 500 more to the constituents. So 550 got in my constituency. But what about the rest? On May 5th, Minister Robinson Regis said that 2,991 of 30,000 applications received got bank transfers. Today, she updated those numbers. But the question is, how many of the people who really need are going to be reached? The finance minister talked about a $300 million loan. I don't know anyone in the business community who has yet accessed those loans, which are meant to be collateralized in part by government, and the government is meant to subsidize all the interest. The VAT refunds you can't take as loans, that is their money. The income tax refunds, that is their money. And we get numbers of, we hardly ever get numbers of the actual number of people being reached. We get the number of money, amount of money that has been allocated. We get the number of money that is being spent, but we don't get the number of people who have actually been reached. In The Guardian today, there's talk about salary grants not reaching the people. Okay? So you have a situation. Today, for instance, somebody called me the $1,500 grant, which is supposed to be $1,500 for 3 months. Actually, the person was told by social development that they are to use it $500 a month, and they will not get any more. There is some confusion about that. So there are real problems here in terms of the government grants. There are problems in terms of the facilities, Tobago Hotel facility, the credit union, all of these things. Very little has in fact been dished out to people. On the energy front, you have a situation where the country is not in a good place. It is not just the international price of oil and gas and other energy commodities. It is also the aftermath of the refinery closure at Petrotrin, the closure of 7 downstream plants, and the potential deindustrialization of Point Lisa's estate, and the need to bring upstream, NGC, and downstream around the table to navigate a resolution. And there are other outstanding issues in energy, which I will not deal here because I don't have the time. There was a needless controversy raised about my serving on the Roadmap Committee. Which of you on the other side would have served on a Prime Minister Kamala Prasad-Bissasa's committee of anything without first raising it with Dr. Rowley? Why the double standards? I have been grateful to serve this nation in many capacities, and I will continue to do so. I served on Vision 2020. I worked with Prime Minister Manning to speak to the heads of CARICOM on quickening the pace of wider economic integration. CARICOM was not ready in 2004. I've dedicatedly served Prime Ministers Robinson, Pandey, Prasad-Bissassa, and Lloyd Best and I enjoyed a healthy collaboration till the end. Today I serve the UNC, its vision and mission, or leader, the Kamala Prasad-Bissassa leader of the opposition. Every road I take and have taken is a road of national commitment and of national service, and I will not change that. Trinidad and Tobago is the only country I have, the only country that I belong to. I give my ideas freely. I speak, I write, I talk, I engage. I believe in ideas. Ideas are a doorway to self-discovery, creation, and action. As I close, I have been reflecting on the last 5 years of the Rowley PNM, but especially the last few weeks, and it has been troubling enough to share this quote with you, which I have taken from a 1957 book, Atlas Shrugged. When you see that in order to produce, you need to obtain permission from men who produce nothing. When you see that money is flowing to those who deal not in goods but in favors. When you see that men get richer by graft and by pull than by work, and your laws don't protect you against them but protect them against you. When you see corruption being rewarded and honestly becoming self-sacrifice, you may know that your society is doomed. I ask the citizens of this country to reflect on this. The prospects are not good going forward under this Rowley government. Many citizens of this country, may the citizens of this country have the strength to save Trinidad and Tobago. I had different experiences with development. I went to Singapore. I went to Malaysia at one time in 1990. Those are not really democracies as we understand it, but they are countries that have achieved much in a short time. And there are certain things that they did that are very clear. They drilled down the plan. They included everybody. They integrated everything. They got all the political forces into the fray. They developed a plan which could be aligned with everything that every sector of the country was doing. And small countries can also do a lot. In New Zealand, for instance, they established a system which designated public service officers be held accountable for results. This alone has made a difference in national performance levels. In Estonia, they use information technology and a flat tax to improve. In Costa Rica, tourism, self-branding for sustainable development, ICT and education. In Uruguay, they created an institution that would allow entrepreneurship to flourish. So we can do this. And what is required is not just unity of purpose, but unity of the country itself. Madam Speaker, that is what the political leader of the UNC and the leader of the opposition was looking for. And if we cannot do it like this, we will wait until the election date in order to bring this country together in unity to do a plan together built on the National Transformation Plan. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
This motion requires a seconder.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I propose second the motion and I reserve my right to speak later in the proceedings.
Honourable members, the motion being seconded, I shall now propose the question for debate. Be it resolved that this House agree that the government should favourably consider the Leader of the Opposition's proposal to the Prime Minister of an economic master plan, and be it further resolved that this House agree that the government should facilitate a genuine bipartisan collaboration towards a national policy for recovery and growth in Trinidad and Tobago. The member for Diego Martin Northeast.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in law, the word frivolous means lacking merit and a matter that has little prospect of success, not serious. Vexatious means without reasonable or probable cause, harassing, annoying, instituted maliciously on the basis of improper motives, intended to harass or annoy. I think those legal definitions, Madam Speaker, of the words frivolous and vexatious are best to describe the motion that we have just heard. In fact, it was not only frivolous and vexatious, it was tedious and annoying. Madam Speaker, it seems to me that honourable members opposite
are in some sort of time warp. The member for Caroni Central is also, Madam Speaker, a stranger to the truth. In trying to make one of his points, he claimed that when the government speaks about the grants and the other forms of support that the government has provided, is providing, and will provide as a result of the COVID-19 crisis, the member claimed that we never give numbers. Madam Speaker, I was with you in this Parliament this afternoon, not too long ago, when the Honourable Minister of Social Development and Family Services was asked a question about these very grants. And I heard the Honourable Minister utter the number 15,333 being the number of salary relief grants that had been paid up to yesterday, the 21st of May. So what is all this foolishness about the government does not give out actual numbers? Not only did the Honourable Minister of Social Development indicate that we have paid over 15,000 salary relief grants already, but the value was also given at over $20 million, Madam Speaker. The other problem that the government sees on the other side, as I said, they seem to be living in a time warp, in a little world of their own, is that it is not just the PNM government and the members of the PNM government who are of the view, and the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, by and large, are of the view that this government has done a tremendous job in dealing with the problems caused by COVID-19. It is not just the PNM. It is not just the majority of citizens of this country, but it is the rest of the world, Madam Speaker. And let me remind the member for Caroni Central and members opposite that the Oxford University of the UK, one of the premier universities in the world, University of Oxford, has a school of government called the Blavatnik School of Government, Blavatnik, which studies governments all around the world, studies what they do to deal with matters, to deal with crises, to deal with situations. And the Blavatnik School of Government at the University of Oxford is carrying on a daily examination of every single country in the world, over 180 countries, Madam Speaker, and they have published something called a lockdown rollback checklist. And Madam Speaker, on this lockdown rollback checklist, which is designed to examine a country and look at things like the number of cases that have been controlled, the number of tests that have been done, the preventative measures, the management of imported cases of COVID-19, the community understanding, and a number of other measures that countries have taken throughout the world. And the University of Oxford has ranked Trinidad and Tobago out of over 180 countries as number one in the world in terms of being ready to exit the lockdown. And I'm very pleased to say, and I'm very proud of this government, the Minister of Health, all of the health professionals, all of the frontline workers, and everybody else who has contributed to a situation that as the government has begun to ease the restrictions associated with the lockdown, there has not been another case of COVID-19. We are an exception in the world, Madam Speaker. We are an exception. Other countries far more developed than us, with far more resources, are unable to make that record. We have had no cases for weeks. And as we exit the lockdown, there is no evidence of any spike in cases of the virus. Which other country in the world could say that, Madam Speaker? Not one, I dare say. And that is with respect to the measures that we have taken, the public health measures, the control measures we have taken to ensure that we did not collapse into a state where we could not control the situation, where our health sector was overburdened, where our healthcare workers were overburdened, where we ran out of supplies, we ran out of equipment, we ran out of hospital beds. We are number one in the world, Madam Speaker. And that's not all. The Economist magazine, one of the premier economic research magazines in the world, has looked at 66 emerging economies around the world and has determined whether they have the strength, the financial strength, the economic strength to cope with the problems associated with COVID-19. And this magazine, The Economist, as I said, one of the premier economic research magazines in the world, has ranked Trinidad and Tobago as number 15 out of 66 emerging economies in terms of our ability to withstand the problems that are associated with COVID-19. And this is not PNM saying so. This is not Imbert saying so. This is not the government saying so. This is the Economist magazine. So the members opposite could scream and shout and utter all sorts of empty sounds, Madam Speaker. But the University of Oxford and the Economist magazine are telling the world that Trinidad and Tobago, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, the PNM government of Trinidad and Tobago, under Prime Minister Rowley, we are on the right track. We are best in class, Madam Speaker. Best in class. And what does this motion tell us? What does this motion say? That we are supposed to work with them, opposite, towards some sort of national policy for recovery? Come on. Come on, Madam Speaker. All the opposition has done since this COVID-19 crisis came is to come up with proposals that would destroy the economy, destroy our public health system, create a runaway crisis in terms of the virus, create confusion. They are the ones who said that rum shops should be kept open, no rational basis, Madam Speaker. When the public health experts are telling you that you have to control the places where people congregate, it's only logical. There's no rocket science in that. This is what you have to do. You have to look at where people congregate because you're looking at the likelihood of transmission of this silent killer. And what's so bad about COVID-19? It's different to other viruses such as SARS, Ebola. It's very different. It's different to swine flu. It's different to influenza A or B. Very, very different. And I have seen no understanding among honorable members opposite. No understanding whatsoever. And there are 3 alleged medical doctors on that side. Madam Speaker, what is terrible about COVID-19 is that it's a silent killer. You can have the virus for 14 days and demonstrate no symptoms. Unlike the other viruses, SARS, Ebola, influenza, etc., you get manifestation of symptoms within a matter of days. So if somebody has swine flu or something like that, within 2 or 3 days, the person will be coughing and sneezing, and you can see that something is wrong, but not with this silent killer. The person can have it for 7 days, 10 days, 14 days, and demonstrate no symptoms. In fact, there are people who are asymptomatic, demonstrating no symptoms at all, and therefore they can be carriers and spreaders of the disease. That's what's different about COVID-19, and that is what this government understood. That is why this virus is so deadly, because it can be out there spreading in the population, and nobody would know, unlike other forms of flu. But what do we hear from the other side? Open the rum shop, open this, open that. Let people do this, let people do that. Let everybody come back in. That is the kind of irresponsibility we have been faced with by members on the other side, Madam Speaker. and we are being told to go with them and to deal with their plan. I looked at this alleged plan that was published at the beginning of May, Madam Speaker. Just a hodgepodge, a mishmash, a cut and paste of the same tired, old, outdated, and useless ideas that the UNC has been putting into the system for the last 5 years or so. All of this diatribe, Madam Speaker, was put into the UNC manifesto of 2010 and 2015 in particular. In 2015, all of this tired old diatribe was rejected by the population in 2015. This is just a mishmash, a hodgepodge, a regurgitation of silly ideas. For example, look at this silly idea. After the UNC increased public expenditure by 50%, Madam Speaker, during the 2010 to 2015 period, increased public expenditure by 50% with no commensurate increase in income, creating an unsustainable expenditure pattern, Madam Speaker. Unsustainable. They took public expenditure from 46 billion in 2010 to 63 billion in 2014 with no revenue flow. And that is why they had to raid the bank account of the National Gas Company, raid the current account at the central bank. That is why they had to take us from credit, where we were in 2010, to $9 or $8 billion in overdraft in 2015. Take out $15 billion from the National Gas Company. You know why? Because they had to support their profligate and unsustainable expenditure profile. But here, recommendation number 1, reduce taxes. So we're running a country where expenditure has gone from 46 to 63. We have been able to bring it back down into the 50s. And still, there is a wide disparity between income and expenditure. But the main recommendation of the other side is reduce taxes. So where the money coming from to run the country? Pie in the sky foolishness, Madam Speaker. Remove VAT from basic foods. We did that, Madam Speaker. There is no VAT on basic food items. How you could remove something that already removed? Restart the Guaracara refinery. Madam Speaker, the Oil Field Workers Trade Union put in a bid along with other bidders for the refinery. They won the bid. They are now in the process of doing the due diligence. COVID-19 has slowed them down, understandably. They were not able to do what they should have been able to do because they have been stuck for the last several months. But they're working on it, Madam Speaker. And the leader of the opposition expects us to breach a public procurement process, cancel the contract with Patriotic, and give it to somebody else, Madam Speaker. This is what they're recommending. This is what is in the opposition plan. That's what we're supposed to do. Let me see what else. Jumpstart food security. Madam Speaker, the record will show that when you examine the contribution of agriculture to our gross domestic product over the 2010 to 2015 period, despite all the old talk and fancy talk, there was a decline in agricultural production between 2010 and 2015 under the previous administration. But according to them, they will jumpstart food security. You think it's a car? You come with a battery and you jumpstart? So, Madam Speaker, what else are they recommending? Take idle cash balances from National Insurance Board and unit trusts and use it to create a fund so that you could develop national infrastructure. Madam Speaker, are they living in Trinidad and Tobago? I have laid in this Parliament the report of the actuaries on the National Insurance Fund. And this has been known to the other side for years because my predecessor also laid reports of the actuaries on the National Insurance Fund. And every report of the actuaries shows that the National Insurance Fund is in difficulty, that contributions are less than benefits. Right now, the National Insurance Board is paying out more every month than it receives in contributions because we have an aging population, less and less people in the NIS system, more and more people on NIS pension. People are living longer, and the last actual report that I laid in this parliament not too long ago indicated that unless we take action, the National Insurance Fund will be in serious difficulty in the next 15 to 20 years. So what cash, idle cash, does the National Insurance system have that they could just hand over $4 billion for some infrastructure fund? Pie in the sky. What idle cash does the unit trust have? Idle cash. Madam Speaker, the unit trust is investing its funds all the time. The money in the unit trust belongs to bondholders, thousands of little ordinary people. That is not idle cash. You could just go and huff it, which is what is being proposed by honorable members. Next ridiculous suggestion: create a green climate trust fund using the green fund. Madam Speaker, the UNC mortgaged the green fund. They use all the assets in the green fund and mortgage it and overdrew the government bank account to $9 billion. The whole green fund is mortgaged since the advent of the UNC. But they're saying use the green fund to create a green climate fund. What else are they saying? Deepen economic reforms with a human face. Madam Speaker, the majority of economic pain that the people of this country have had to withstand between 2015 and now is because of the reckless overspending, waste, mismanagement, and corruption that we encountered between 2010 and 2015. That is the pain that the people of this country suffered, and that is what we in the PNL have dealt with and are dealing with, Madam Speaker. Human face. We'd like to know where Mamu is. Understand, in Panama, run away with $1 billion. Human face. Human face. What else? What else are they recommending? Create an east-west corridor, biotechnology corridor. What is this? Where's the investor demand? Where's the feasibility study for this harebrained scheme? Where are you finding land in the east-west corridor to create an east-west biotechnology manufacturing corridor? Who write that? Who come up with them words, Madam Speaker? They'll just pluck words out of a thesaurus and put them in a piece of paper because it sounds good. Foolishness. Listen to this one. Invite the private sector to manage a locally branded hotel resort in Tobago. You hear that? They chase sandals out of Trinidad and Tobago. They run sandals. They destroy the reputation of Trinidad and Tobago as a safe haven for international hotel brands. They malign sandals, they malign the government, and they run the people. But their solution to business is to create a brand hotel in Tobago. Just talk pie in the sky, Madam Speaker. Listen to this one. Invite international investors to establish a cruise ship complex in Plymouth. You could see none of them ever went to Tobago in their life. They don't even know where Plymouth is. They don't know the ocean currents, the wind action, the swell, and the berthing conditions in Plymouth. There's an old jetty in Plymouth which was abandoned because it's impossible to bring any vessel of any size into Plymouth. But that is their recommendation. They don't know a thing about Tobago. They don't know anything about harbors and safe berthing spaces in Tobago. They just put in words on a piece of paper, Madam Speaker. How much more time do I have, Madam Speaker?
1.
Thank you very much. That's plenty time. So let's see what else. Establish a steel pan manufacturing industry in East Port of Spain. This is just old talk. That's like the cable car from Lavantil. Another pie in the sky dream from the member for Caroni Central. Remember that, honorable members? He was going to build a cable car from Lavantil to Port of Spain. 5 years they're there, and they never built one piece of cable in Lavantil. But he was going to build a cable car and a tunnel to go to the North Coast. They just talk. But they can't do. They can't do anything. Just old talk. Steel pan manufacturing industry in East Port of Spain. Why you didn't do it when he was in government? Why you didn't do it? You're just talking. This lip service, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, there's nothing else in this plan. Just a mishmash, a hodgepodge of ridiculous, empty, vacuous, frivolous proposals. Make absolutely no sense. Now let's look at what we are doing, Madam Speaker. Let's see what we're doing. Madam Speaker, under the astute management of this government, the Rowley administration was able to deal with a very catastrophic collapse of global energy prices in 2016. You remember, Madam Speaker? Oil went to $25 in 2016. We lost $20 billion. $20 billion in 1 year in revenues from petroleum. National income dropped from $56 billion per annum, as it was in 2014, to $36 billion in 2016. $20 billion, Madam Speaker. More than 1/3 of national income just disappeared, just so, overnight. Any other administration would have been hard-pressed to deal with that. Certainly, they would not have been able to deal with that, Madam Speaker. But we, in the PNM administration, we got advice from experts on fiscal and monetary policy. We did a wide range of consultations. We looked at our economy, looked at the fact that we were spending about $10 billion that we didn't have to, and we did a number of measures aimed at fiscal consolidation, and we were able to slowly stabilize and recover the economy so that it went from that catastrophic situation in 2016 when we had economic decline occasioned by a 40% loss in revenue of about 6%, bring it down to 2%, and then bring it down to 0, Madam Speaker, and stabilize the economy. That is what this administration was able to do. We also have been able to manage the Heritage and Stabilization Fund very well, Madam Speaker. When we came in, it was $5.6 billion. And pre-COVID, we got it up to 6.5 because of astute management. And even when we got it up to 6.5 billion US dollars, a lot of old talk outside there, you know, old talk. When we came in, the Heritage Fund was at 5.6 billion US. We took it up to 6.5 pre-COVID. And that is after withdrawing $600 million for funding of the deficit in 16 and 17. So when you take that all into account, Madam Speaker, we had grown that fund by 1.5 billion US dollars in the 4 years. And even now, Madam Speaker, in the last month or so, the fund was able to recover from the collapse of world stock markets, Madam Speaker. Anybody who has any knowledge of world stock markets would have seen what happened to the New York Stock Exchange in the February-March period. Stock markets just collapsed the same way oil prices collapsed. People lost trillions of dollars in value, Madam Speaker, all over the world. And we, in that situation, found ourselves losing about $900 million in a month in terms of our Heritage Fund. And we have already recovered $700 million of that, Madam Speaker, over the last month. We have recovered $700 million US dollars, 5 billion Trinidad and Tobago dollars, through astute management of the Stabilization Fund, Madam Speaker. Look at what we are doing in response to COVID. Because they can't take it, you know. It's pressure for them, you know. We have established the salary relief grant. We have put an allocation for that of up to $500 million, Madam Speaker. That is for persons within the national insurance system. Then we have a number of social support measures in the Ministry of Social Development for persons outside the national insurance system. Because, as I indicated in an earlier statement to this House, about 1/3 of the labor force is outside of the national insurance system. We have about 600,000 people in the labor force, and 200,000 or so of them not registered for national insurance. So recognizing this as a reality, which is something that we have to address as a government, we instituted a system through the Ministry of Social Development to deal with people outside of the NIS system, and a series of grants, food support, food cards, income support, public assistance, and so on. And we have given the Ministry of Social Development another $500 million allocation for that. So that's $1 billion, Madam Speaker, between the salary relief grant and the various number of grants in the Ministry of Social Development. Just today, the Minister of Works and Transport started the process of giving out the fuel support grant to maxi taxi owners. As I speak here, The Minister of Transport, the Honorable Rohan Sinanan, is in his office handing out fuel grants of $2,000 to maxi taxi owners because we are a government that cares about people, Madam Speaker. And that is estimated to cost $10 million and may actually cost a little bit more as we go along, Madam Speaker. We established a special foreign exchange window in the Exim Bank because we recognized that we had to have food security in terms of imports and foreign exchange available for essential supplies, for medical supplies, for pharmaceuticals, for personal protective equipment, and so on. So we established a special forex window through the Exim Bank, and qualified importers are now already accessing that facility to get their foreign exchange. We've given out $700 million, Madam Speaker, in accelerated payments of income tax refunds to individuals. In fact, we cleared off every single individual income tax refund due at the Treasury and the BIR, Madam Speaker. Every single individual income tax refund has been paid, accelerated, whether you put in your return last month or you put it in last year. We clear off all. And we've cleared off all VAT refunds due, whether you were due it 2 months ago or whether you were due it last year, up to $500,000 in cash. That is a total of $700. And I'm happy to say today that we've issued VAT bonds in the amount of $175 million, Madam Speaker, over the last week. VAT bonds of $175 million. And we're well on our way to our target of $1 billion over the next 2 or 3 weeks in VAT bonds, and then going for $3 billion in VAT bonds, Madam Speaker. These are payments that would not normally be made because the government simply doesn't have the cash flow. And we're clearing off VAT arrears before they're due, Madam Speaker. Under the legislation, VAT arrears are not due for 6 months. We're clearing off all. Doesn't matter if you put it in 3 months ago, 4 months ago, we're clearing them all off, Madam Speaker. That is performance. P&M style, Madam Speaker. That is performance. We've given the credit unions a facility of $100 million to make soft loans to their members. Grants to religious bodies, $30 million. Money going to the Ministry of Local Government, another $30 million for food support. We've worked with the central bank and the commercial banks to have relief in terms of loan payments and so on, Madam Speaker. Reducing reserves at the central bank, increasing liquidity, reducing the prime interest rate. We've given Tobago $50 million in COVID funding for medical purposes, another $50 million available to them for hotels, another $5 million available to Tobago for enterprise development, and Tobago will get more, Madam Speaker, from this administration for other entities in Tobago who have been affected by the COVID-19 crisis, Madam Speaker. We've sent money for University UE students in Mona and in Cave Hill, Madam Speaker. It doesn't end. Every day we assess what needs to be done and we deal with it, Madam Speaker. We have also been able to maintain an investment-grade rating with Standard & Poor's, and I am happy to announce today that Moody's has affirmed our credit rating, where countries all over the world are being downgraded. Today, Moody's affirmed our international credit rating, Madam Speaker. We were able to get our credit rating affirmed because we had a comprehensive medium-term macroeconomic fiscal framework that we produced for Moody's, and they accepted it. UNC don't have to accept what we're doing, but the Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and all the international agencies are happy and welcome to accept what the PNM is doing, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, we had a roadmap committee meeting on Monday, the presentation of the first report, looking at all the things that we are doing, the $300 million loan program for small and medium enterprises, $35 million grant program for micro-enterprises. Those are just some of the things, Madam Speaker. I don't have enough time to talk about it all. I have hundreds of pages of things here I could talk about. But I simply want to say this motion is frivolous, it is vexatious, and it is ridiculous, and I reject it, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to begin my contribution by joining the national community really in a word of thanking God for his many mercies and blessings that he has bestowed upon this country and its peoples over the last couple of weeks. And also to say a prayer of gratitude alongside all citizens for the safety of our frontline persons who have been involved in treating with citizens of the country, in treating with all those who have been affected during this particular crisis. Madam Speaker, in his typical style, the member for Diego Martin Northeast has tried once again to create and develop a narrative he started way back in 2015, and even before that, in the days when he used to have emotional outbursts sitting in this parliament and will drop all his books on the ground and so on. That is an emotional side of him that is well known. It is the actor side of him. But in doing so, he thinks that he will fool the people. But I remind him again, you can fool some people some of the time, but not all of the people all the time. And he started by talking about legal definitions of this motion being frivolous and vexatious and so on and so forth. But in doing that, it struck me that he didn't understand how serious this motion is in terms of his own government and the manner in which they are treating with the distress of this country. When you stand up in this parliament and you make a joke of this motion, you make a joke of the feelings and emotions and the distress of the people of this country, Mr. Minister. Nothing will excuse this government for its failure to protect this country for the future. It is not just about COVID-19 now. It is not about what has happened in the last 2 months. It is what is going to happen and the manner in which you are setting the foundations for the recovery and reconstruction of this country in the future. And may I say here and now that while you tried to make a mockery of the UNC plan for recovery, let me say, Mr. Minister of Finance and member for Diego Martin Northeast, you think that you probably did that. But your government has not produced, it has failed to present to this country a plan that will take this country into a sustainable economic future. The only plan that the country is able to see before it, the only plan that the country is able to evaluate is that which has been presented by the United National Congress. That's the only plan. And when you talk about the plan of the UNC, and you talk about everything else, you still have to account for your last 57 months in office, 56 months in office. You have had 56 months in office to create a plan that will see a country not depend on oil and gas and what happens to the fluctuations in the prices of oil and gas. There has been no plan for diversification in this country, no plan to take this country into a sustainable economic future. So you try to make a mockery of the plan for the East-West corridor, not realizing that some of the worst poverty is in the East-West corridor, where you need to create jobs, and you need to create industries that the world wants. This is part of the problem I've been saying all the time. Trinidad and Tobago has to decide what it is that the world wants that we can, in fact, produce, rather than simply thinking that God is a Trini and that we'll have oil and gas to survive for all to come. So, the only plan for diversification of this country has been presented by the United National Congress. That's the only plan. You talk about revenue streams. I want to ask the minister, what new revenue streams have you created over the last 56 months you have been in office? What are they? You talk about the UNC using up money while they were there. Haven't you been raiding the Heritage and Stabilization Fund also? Haven't you been doing that? You have been borrowing excessively, both on the local market and the foreign market. And you are not telling the country now what is the rate of debt to GDP. And with a falling GDP, that rate is going to become even higher, putting the country in a kind of peril. What is the stream of revenues, therefore, that you intend to create in the future that will cause you to be able to repay those debts? Even if you have a moratorium now, like you have negotiated in one or two of your things with CAF, you have to pay those debts in the future, and the country will be indebted because of the debts you are creating, and you are not showing a new stream of revenues from which we will be able to pay the debts. But when you look back at the United National Congress, and you look back at one area, for example, tourism, the United National Congress was on a path of creating a viable sports tourism industry in this country. Say what you want about Anil Rabat, say what you want about former Prime Minister Kamla Prasad Bisesa. But when you look at the tennis center, when you look at the cycling center, when you look at the swimming center, you know that you are creating streams of revenue for the future while you are also developing your people internationally. Cycling, in Couva, a whole sporting tourism complex there. But instead of that, what you have is Tobago, where tourism is dead. Tourism is dead in Tobago. And what you're doing, you're bribing the people of Tobago by giving them $50 million and say, repair your hotels here, but they don't have any plans for bringing guests into Tobago. You pay airlines to bring people into Tobago. When you can't pay those airlines to bring people on every one of the seats that you pay £100 or what is going to happen to the people of Tobago? And the people of Tobago must open their eyes to see the bribery that is being put in their face and understand that this country will not be able to support that kind of
Madam
thing
Speaker,
into
stand
future.
in order 48-6, bribing Tobago.
Okay, so member for Tamaki, I'd ask you to withdraw that word and please restate in a more acceptable manner.
Sure, Madam Speaker. The word bribery is withdrawn. It's just creating false hopes to the people of Tobago. Creating false hopes to the people of Tobago. Tourism is dead in Tobago. Whether you like it or not, tourism is dead in Tobago. You talk about saying that the UNC ran sandals out of Tobago. Why don't you talk about what the people of Tobago had to say, how they would have been scandalized by that investment in Tobago, and they would have been run into the ground because Sandals was being given all that Sandals wanted, and they were not being given what was due to them to develop their small and medium-sized enterprises. There are two sides of these stories. You know, the minister is borrowing all kind of money, but the minister is not thinking about the existing debts of the country. If I were the Minister of Finance, I would have at this point in time look at all those debts that we have, loans that we have, and try to renegotiate those loans, try to renegotiate the rates on those loans, try to create moratoriums also on those loans so you can have an economic space, a financial space, in order to rebuild this economy as it has to be rebuilt. But the minister is not thinking in those particular terms. Madam Speaker, I want to repeat, nothing will excuse this government for its failure to begin to protect this country for the future by having a viable economic recovery plan. The government has a responsibility to make sure it treats with the needs of the people of this time. That's a responsibility of the government. But it has a greater responsibility for what happens after COVID, after the end of COVID. The plan for recovery and reconstruction that has not been presented to them. But the thing is that a plan is not all that is enough. It is about who is capable of carrying out the plan and who is capable of delivering results. And that requires leadership and that requires management. And we have not seen that because there has been no transformation of the economy under the PNM. There have been administrative changes. But that does not create the basis for getting you the revenues that will create a sustainable future. Madam Speaker, COVID-19 is really an opportunity, as we see it, to rethink development, to rethink the basis for economic prosperity, for sustainable growth, especially in a country, I want to repeat, that keeps its bets on oil and gas. COVID-19 is an opportunity, as we see, to mobilize, and we would have mobilized the people to make a dramatic shift in their attitudes to work, in love for country, to become more self-sustaining at the personal level, to help wean people away from state dependency, to create entrepreneurship. But what do we have? We have over 300,000 persons who are either self-employed or in small and medium-sized enterprises. They have no idea of what their future is going to be, because those small enterprises and those self-employed persons, they have a very bleak vision of their future, because no hope is being provided for them by way of a plan, by way of the kind of support that they can expect, because nothing is reaching them at this particular point in time. It's not reaching them. Nothing has been presented by the government for small and medium-sized enterprises that the government, that suggests that the government is putting them on a path of reconstruction with a modicum of hope for a more prosperous future. So where is the plan? What has the COVID-19 committee come up with so far? We were supposed to get reports from the COVID committee. What do we have from them? Instead, we have today a very patriotic Gary Aboud accusing the government of discrimination in terms of how you're reopening businesses, and saying openly, to quote him in The Guardian, in the Express, sorry, crippling multiple small business and self-employed people. Crippling. The minister talked about agricultural production. Madam Speaker, food security, whether we like it or not, is going to be a very important thing in the next couple of years. Food security. It's no good talking about agricultural production falling and so on. Now is the time to talk about how we are going to support the farmers of this country in order to produce more, and how you are going to get them in order to move in terms of vertical integration into agro-processing. Where is the government setting up a committee now that will help to move us from simple agricultural production to agro-processing and creating food security? You know, vision is a funny thing. When the People's Partnership was in government, Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa created the Ministry of Food Production as against agriculture. And that's significant, because food production meant that she saw the need to have food security in the country. Food security in the country. So there's no team put together yet to transit and to make sure that agriculture comes into the forefront, and we are able to ensure that people will be fed. You see, there's a difference between a talking government and a doing government. And this government is a talking government. It is not good enough to just talk about policies. It is good to talk about implementation and results. What are the results that people should expect under this particular, in this particular situation? Madam Speaker, there have been one or two surveys done by AmCham, a first and second, of the state of businesses in this country. If this government was serious, and if we were in charge, what we would have been doing is continuous surveys right now of the businesses in this country. But the government itself, unless I am wrong, has not done any survey of business entities to really determine the level of economic and financial distress. They have not done that. If a survey was done, we would be able to put a more progressive plan to save jobs and to introduce the relevant policies and programs. What you have by the Minister of Finance, I like to describe as a Band-Aid program. You know, Band-Aid is something you put on a cut. A Band-Aid program rather than a structured program. It seems to me, and the country is beginning to realize it, the decisions are more politically driven than people-centered. So if you think, for example, about the $2,000 that they are giving to the maxi taxi drivers, very good. But Madam Speaker, I want to ask a question. Given that oil prices have fallen so much, and given that that should have resulted in a drop of prices at the pump, how is it in Trinidad and Tobago we are importing gas and diesel and the prices are not dropped at the pump? If the prices were to drop at the pump, wouldn't the maxi taxis and the taxis and so on benefit much more? So while I say that they should be happy that they are getting somewhat of the $2,000, at the same time, that is not enough. Madam Speaker, COVID-19 has done something important for Trinidad and Tobago. It has exposed poverty in Trinidad and Tobago. But side by side with exposing poverty, it has exposed the generosity, the tremendous generosity of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker, who have been able to give to each other. And had the people of Trinidad and Tobago, in terms of their personal generosity and corporate generosity, not come forward, a lot more people would have been suffering in this country. Madam Speaker, I don't want to go over it, but it's difficult to have 1,600 children in your constituency on the school feeding program, and to see them come with their mothers and fathers at your door in the constituency, and you can only give 500 cards, or you can only give 50 hampers. Madam Speaker, it's difficult. Madam Speaker, you know what it takes for a mother who has never, ever come to my office to come and say, I have no food to give my baby. I need some milk for my baby, which is $80 a tin, and she has none. Her husband doesn't have any work, and he has applied for the salary relief fund and has not gotten it. Madam Speaker, some of on the government side who are still living in glass towers, secluded from the reality of the poverty and the suffering and the stress. Read The Guardian today, and you will see the personal stories of people in terms of what is happening. Madam Speaker, we talk about online learning right now, and children will be home and there's online learning. But do you know there are hundreds, maybe thousands of children who, Madam Speaker, do not have a computer, do not have internet access, and therefore they are being excluded from online learning. You know, if I may just say, yes, yesterday, I personally bought 20 tablets and gave it to students at Naparima College because they don't have. Madam Speaker, we have to reach out. But when the People's Partnership government was giving computers to the school, they said that they will use it for other purposes and study. Today, we see the vision of the People's Partnership with respect to the computer program. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you must have seen the pictures of the police distributing food hampers in Diego Martin and the conditions under which people are living, Madam Speaker. Subhuman conditions, Madam Speaker. And yet, we have a national self-help program in this country that should be put to use to do that. I always remember 37 days after the NAR got into office, the then Prime Minister, Mr. Robinson, called me and said, you know, you started a self-help program when you were chairman of St. Patrick. I want you to give me a paper so that I can start a national self-help commission in Trinidad and Tobago. And myself and Mr. Gerard Hadid prepared that paper for the start of the National Self-Help Commission. Madam Speaker, I want to warn this government. I heard they are speaking about selling state assets, or the possibility of selling state assets. Madam Speaker, I want to tell them that when you sell an asset that has a stream of future revenue possibilities, and you take that money and use it for recurrent expenditure, then you do not have that stream of revenue coming. You have to be very careful how you decide to sell state assets, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, why doesn't the government look right now in terms of a plan? Let me give you one example. You are importing $136 million in fish and fish-related products, Madam Speaker, including tilapia from China, while you have all the ponds all over the place where you can get your people involved in producing tilapia, which is a high source of protein, and get into fish processing together with other foods. Madam Speaker, the Honourable Minister of Finance and the Central Bank have been prevailing upon the banking community to assist people with their loans and deferrals. Now people are discovering that it's not a deferral that doesn't have a cost, that you still have to pay your interest, and you're paying interest upon interest. You know, I make bold to say that banks have not been very kind to the people during this time of COVID. They have not been kind, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, people are just only extending their loans. If you speak to small and medium-sized businesses, you will hear they're planning now to scale down operations. Madam Speaker, job losses are on the rise, whether we agree or not. And you are not hearing of any concrete plan to give financial support to these vulnerable businesses. Madam Speaker, I make bold in this parliament to say today that banks should be prepared to give up 25% of their profits in the form of interest rate reductions and deferral without penalties to the people of this country. The banks cannot be forced to do that. But the government holds serious investments in Republic Bank and First Citizens, as well as unit trusts and other financial institutions that carry mortgage portfolios. And the government can start by indicating to...
Member for Tabakit, the speaking time is now spent.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Miaro.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to join in this debate. As I join with my colleague from Caroni Central for this motion, Madam Speaker, I want to make it very clear as I'm starting that we must separate in this country the measures taken by the government in terms of the medical response versus the economic policy social response. I have no issues today with the medical response. I think the medical response have been on par. It has been with the greatest of results as identified today, and I have no issues with the medical response. I think the advice given by the medical professionals, because I know neither the Minister of Health is a doctor, the Prime Minister is a doctor, the Minister of National Security is a doctor, but they have been given the best of advice by the medical professionals. Madam Speaker, what I have the challenges with, Madam Speaker, going forward, it's the response of from the economic policies and the social policies. Madam Speaker, in the United States and Great Britain, Canada, and several European countries, most of these modern societies have had purposeful debates in their respective parliaments on measures to combat the medical and economic crisis caused by COVID-19. Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker, has been a notable exception. The government has declined to debate many aspects in terms of the responses to this emergency. The single occasion that the government has come to this parliament on a COVID-19 related issue was to dip into the Sovereign Heritage and Stabilization Fund. There has been very little accountability to Parliament on the billion-dollar spending, on the value of the measures to the people, and on procurement of applicable goods and services. Madam Speaker, in Great Britain, from which Trinidad and Tobago has adopted its Westminster system of Parliament, all parliamentarians were permitted to participate in debates, some of them remotely through digital technology. Madam Speaker, the Boris Johnson's government dutifully reported to the people, and relevant ministers provided extensive accountability and subjected themselves to questions from the opposition. Madam Speaker, the prestigious Commonwealth Lawyers Association said in a statement that governments must account to their respective population through their parliaments. The executive in any parliamentary democracy must be scrutinized by Parliament, Madam Speaker. The politicians and those who find themselves as part of an executive at this time have a responsibility to be accountable to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, the arbitrariness and lack of partnership and bipartisanship which the government adopted in the COVID-19 crisis so far is a major reason for its disorganization and slapdash approach and the lack of meaningful success from an economic and social perspective. Madam Speaker, the government has not consulted or partnered with the largest national organization that has the widest electoral support, as evidenced by the local government election results, the United National Congress. How do you go forward in building national consensus in any sort of plan in terms of the post-COVID-19 response without the views of the United National Congress, the parliamentary opposition in this country, Madam Speaker? The government must do like other countries and make the opposition a meaningful partner. in order to achieve the united purpose and a national consensus, which will be very much needed going forward. Madam Speaker, the government's financial response to the economic crisis caused by COVID-19 should have been prioritized in the following way. Keeping people employed has to be the highest of the order. Incentivizing and supporting the small and micro enterprises, effective social security measures, reducing bank costs, Madam Speaker, which is a huge issue today for our small and micro enterprises, deferring payments on loans and on utility charges and other statutory bills, liquidity support, and offering credit lines and guarantees. But, Madam Speaker, there is an absence of strategic goals and objectives in the government's, I would say, VUPS and VAPS type of response to the economic crisis. Madam Speaker, the government's response is characterized by repaying a fraction of the long outstanding BIR and VAT refunds and proudly terming that as assistance to the SME sector. But, Madam Speaker, those small businesses that would have been owed this VAT and these BIR refunds for many, many years, all this money would have done was to fill that hole that have been existing in their working capital budgets. So this money, Madam Speaker, is really coming to fill it. It doesn't add any new value, any new buying, purchasing power to these businesses to keep them afloat going into a post-COVID-19 economy, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, after listening to the Minister of Finance today, the Honourable Minister has really convinced himself, and he has also sought to persuade this country that this particular measure was a meaningful intervention in assisting the endangered SME sector. Madam Speaker, all this time, thousands of SMEs are in danger of folding up, leading to increased unemployment, Madam Speaker, which is one of the biggest concerns that I have as a Member of Parliament for Mayaro. Madam Speaker, about 85% of businesses in this country are small and medium-sized. Still, the government has not responded to this critical and urgent need of this vital sector. The Minister has spoken about a $300 million fund that is going to be specifically directed to SMEs. But as of today, it's going in about 2 or 3 weeks. I have heard nothing about it, about how these SMEs are going to be classified, what is the mechanism for getting this fund, and how soon it will be available to these SMEs to get them going. Madam Speaker, in contrast, progressive governments have provided tangible supports to their SMEs in their countries, Madam Speaker. If you allow me to give a couple of examples, in Britain, a business interruption loan scheme was introduced to assist with cash flow. The government covered the cost of a specified number of sick days by employees, provided cash grants, and deadlines were extended for tax payments. None of that has happened or have even been considered in our environment here, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, most noticeable, and I know it was raised by my colleague for Shagwana's, for Tabakit, in terms of the bank interest rates. In Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker, the central bank reduced the reserve requirement and the repo rate, but commercial banks have not responded in kind to its customers. Instead, moratoriums were granted, with customers eventually having to pay interest on top of interest. And I don't think that was the intention of the minister, the finance minister, when he made that announcement many weeks ago. On top of that, Madam Speaker, customers are also being made to pay the cost of new legal contracts with respect to negotiated loans. So, Madam Speaker, a man owns a car, and he has to ask for an extension or deferral. But because this mortgage document has to be redone, he now has to pay a $3,000 or $4,000 legal fee in order to get that deferral. I really do think that was the intention of the minister, and that is something that I feel the banks really should have been, should reconsider and do not apply this pressure to our citizens, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the government has done very little or nothing for banking clients. commercial banks, in my respectful view, Madam Speaker, have escaped having to be a part of this financial burden. I think they got off easily. Madam Speaker, there has been very little rhyme or reason in the government's social security measures. I know speakers before have spoken about the issue concerning food cards to the students to the parents of students on the school feeding program. And again, it is widely known that all MPs' offices did get 500 cards. But what I just want to say is that for the Miara constituency, Madam Speaker, we have 26 schools. And the total list of students on that list was about 3,600. And we did a meticulous cleaning up the list. We looked for parents that had multiple children. We looked for parents who had children in multiple schools. And when we tallied the list down, we ended up with a little under 1,900 students. So, Madam Speaker, even with the 500 cards that were issued to the Miara constituency, we still ended up with about 1,400 children that would have been left off.
Guys, could the member please go outside and get their device under control? Continue, Member Premier. Please continue, Member Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, so I was saying, Madam Speaker, that the balance of students who were left, the 1,400 students that were left in the Miara constituency, it has put them at somewhat of a disadvantage. And I think the messaging and communication a bit was bad, because I think that at the inception of the program, there was the feeling that all of the students would have gotten these cards. And it has put a bit of pressure on MPs' offices. I know all around, the request for this support has come, and I think that would have caused some problems for us. And the replacement program as well, Madam Speaker, with regards to the food kit, which again I have absolutely no problem with. It is my understanding that MP's offices, my office, will get probably a maximum of 200 kits, of which we've gotten 50 so far. Again, if we apply that 200 to the balance, it still brings about 1,200 students that will be left out of the program. But in that case, Madam Speaker, we are trying our best to work with our corporate folks in Miara, some of the NGOs, to try and fill that gap as we go forward. Madam Speaker, in a post-COVID-19 economy, the way forward will not be business as usual. The post-COVID-19 economy will be one of reduced globalization and increased focus on the development of the nation state. Trinidad and Tobago, therefore, has to make quick strides towards food sufficiency. There must be substantive measures towards the effective diversification away from the now struggling energy sector. Investors, Madam Speaker, must be lured back to Trinidad and Tobago, and improving the ease of doing business matrices is an important factor in our first steps post-COVID-19. The current government has not attracted a single investor, Madam Speaker. In addition to several entrenched investors like ArcelorMittal and Unilever, they have fled to greener investment pastures. As a result, thousands of workers have lost their jobs. In a new economy, Madam Speaker, we must place the focus on renewable energy, climate change, and the ever-evolving technology, including artificial intelligence. Madam Speaker, all these areas are clearly identified in the UNC's National Transformation Plan for Trinidad and Tobago. So I can't see how the Minister of Finance can, in his own words, tread lightly on some of these ideas, some of these plans, because the government has not mentioned a single one of those initiatives over the last 4.5 years. They don't even speak about it, Madam Speaker, in the debates. So I'm a bit skeptical as to what is the COVID-19 going forward plans, what is it going to be if the plans that we have submitted in the National Transformation Proposal is being ridiculed and laughed at, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, improving our manufacturing competitiveness and improving worker production are an essential part in boosting the output and to improving trade. Madam Speaker, post-COVID-19, Our trade output has to be increased. It has to be our output, our quality, our time to deliver, your just-in-time services. These things have to be tightened, Madam Speaker. It's all identified in our National Transformation Plan. In many cases, Madam Speaker, labor skills will have to be retrained, and manufacturers must introduce cutting-edge technologies. So in our National Transformation Plan, we speak to the retraining of workers. We speak to the role of education in terms of retraining our senior citizens, our mature citizens, because we now have to find a new model, a new role that they can work in new industries, new systems going forward. Madam Speaker, the focus as well has to be placed on strengthening national institutions, implementing watertight procurement measures, introducing a modern national statistical organization is absolutely critical. Madam Speaker, the UNC have consulted extensively and has proposed this economic master plan that places emphasis on reducing the tax burden on citizens. Madam Speaker, added to that, jump-starting food production, resuming the petroleum refining, and investing in renewable energies all lay at the core deliverable on our National Transformation Plan. There are plans to utilize the abandoned Caroni lands for an extensive fruit production program, which would also create thousands of job opportunities and spawn agro-processing operators. Madam Speaker, the World Bank has warned of widespread poverty in developing countries. The president of the bank has said the shutting down of economic activity is erasing much of the recent progress in poverty alleviation. In Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker, thousands of dispossessed, including workers in the informal sector, single mothers, and the elderly and infirm are slipping into poverty. More than 1 in 3 nationals are already having great difficulty in putting food on the table, buying their medication, and meeting their nominal monthly bills. While the government would argue that it has set up a recovery committee, there is a fierce urgency of now, and there is need for new thinking, appreciating the current international economic dynamics. Throwing money at the problem, Madam Speaker, is not the solution. The government cannot sit idly by, as it is doing with the Point Lisas industrial estate, and expect the issues to evaporate. Trinidad and Tobago has to become more innovative, competitive, and self-reliant in the quickest possible time. Madam Speaker, the government must bring all stakeholders on board in this period of unparalleled crisis. Almost 5 years, the government has ignored labor, employers, business, independent economic experts, academia, manufacturers, NGOs, CBOs. There must not be a repeat of the scenario that led to the resignation in frustration of members of the Economic Advisory Board, and their proposals were rejected. There is urgent need to protect both lives and livelihoods at this time, Madam Speaker. The opposition implores the government to adopt a cooperative, bipartisan approach to the clear and present economic danger. We in the opposition are willing, prepared, and anxious to play a meaningful role during this critical and challenging period. The solutions to the crisis should ideally be charted by all national stakeholders. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Member for St. Joseph.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, just for clarity, at what time do I end, please?
You have 20 minutes.
20 minutes. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It is my absolute pleasure to join this debate and to follow my colleague, the Minister of Finance, who I must congratulate, did an excellent job in debunking the unfounded theories put forward by my colleagues opposite. Madam Speaker, in the 20 minutes that I have, I would just want to put on record the following facts. Facts. And this motion starts off with the ultimate human aspect. The ultimate human aspect of COVID-19 is saving lives, reducing cases, and ensuring that people have lives to go back to a livelihood after. Madam Speaker, Trinidad and Tobago has been recognized as a world leader in its management of COVID-19, a world leader. Madam Speaker, let us compare and contrast the UNC's approach to COVID-19 versus the PNM's approach to COVID-19. The UNC suggested a state of emergency. Take away people's constitutional rights. That's their approach. But then they went to court to keep rum shops open. Which way do you want it? Our approach was a strategic, well-thought-out, graded approach applied over 65 measures starting on January 21st, when I, as Minister of Health, went to TV6 on January 21st and spoke about COVID. January 30th, we took the decision for first travel restrictions for China, first in the hemisphere. January 31st, Trinidad and Tobago, TNT, declared COVID-19 a dangerous infectious disease. It was only on March 11th that the WHO declared it same. We were before the WHO. Before. What else did we do? Mitigation. March 12th, we had our first case. March 12th, we suspended the cruise ship season. March 13th, we closed schools. And closing schools, I am told by the public health experts, was the best thing that we could have done. The best thing. Hard decision. March 18th, the Prime Minister addressed and advised that several committees be established across the financial, labor, social, and economic sectors to deal with the fallout. March 19th, financial and social policy measures were announced. March 30th, March 29th, we had our first death, and the village ghoul was the first to announce it. Couldn't wait for the family to know, but the village ghoul, reveling in that death, announced it. And it goes on and on. April 16th, the Prime Minister, a responsible man, announced the Road to Recovery Committee. What else was the UNC's approach to managing COVID? Use hydroxychloroquine, coming from a doctor on the UNC bench. Our approach under our Prime Minister was a parallel healthcare system. Get 74 ventilators, activate 922 beds. That is our response. What was the UNC's response to testing? The member for Siparia is on record as saying, test, test, test. We said, no, you test suspected cases. So the UNC would test asymptomatic people, which is now recognized globally as a waste of time. But here, the biggest insult to this country of all. And I want the member, and I want Dr. Tim Gopi Singh, member for Karnataka Central, who is going to speak after me. And I want Dr. Fuad Khan, member for Barataria Sanwan. And I want Dr. Lakram Bodo, member for Faizabad, to tell this country whether they agree with the Honorable Kamla Prasad Bisesa that our successful response to COVID was because of the weather and heat. I want those three medical experts, and I want the media to call them and ask them whether they concur that the weather was responsible for our position. Any doctor who is going to speak to me after has to say they agree with their leader. Because if you believe that theory, Madam Speaker, it is an insult to healthcare workers in Trinidad and Tobago who work tirelessly. It is an insult to the chief medical officer. And the final insult to the chief medical officer was when the Honorable Kamla Prasad Bisesa said that the chief medical officer was hiding data. and insult a public officer. But we trusted him. We believed in his science. So the Honorable Dr. Tim Gopi Singh, who will follow me, is to tell this country whether the weather and the heat saved this country. The sun. Madam Speaker, we started the revival of the economy on Monday the 11th, and it continued on Thursday the 21st. We have had no new cases now, case 115, 116, for almost 2 incubation periods. But Madam Speaker, one of the reasons you cannot open up small business, especially hairdressers, nail salons, barbers, grooming, massage parlors, is this. And the science will tell you, close physical contact is considered contact within 3 feet for 15 minutes or more. And that is why we can't open up that sector of the society, that sector of the economy. We can't at this point in time. We also want to make sure we have a healthy workforce to go back out to work. And that is why we are protecting people's lives as far as humanly possible. Because no people, no economy. No workers, it means our hospitals are filled and we will not have flattened the curve. No confidence to go back out to work means people are fearful, people are panicking, and people are worrying. We don't have that because people want to go back out to work. That's a good thing because we were measured and scientific. That is how you protect small, micro, and medium enterprises, by giving them the confidence that when the gates are open to them, they are healthy, they are well, and they are alive. Putting people back to work in a responsible way is alien to the UNC, because the word responsible does not exist in their vocabulary. Doing things in a strategic way is alien, because strategy in this whole COVID response was alien to them. Have a state of economy, a state of emergency, but keep rum shops open. We are doing it in a safe way, words that are not in the vocabulary of the UNC. The UNC's response is hydroxychloroquine, put everybody in Maracas, Quinam, Vesini, Charlottesville, put them on the sun, and the sun will kill the COVID. That is their strategy, right? And go to court and let go COVID-free patients into society. That's their approach. You see, they are bent on populism, short-termism. We will take tough decisions in the country's long-term interests. You remember where there was a fire in the last days of their government? Populism, give everybody $5,000. That is what they do. That is what they do. We don't do that. Our decisions, led by the Prime Minister, was based on science, not on temperature. We didn't put a temperature gauge outside there and measure the temperature and say, okay, it is safe. We didn't do it based on sunshine. And I want their 3 doctors to tell me again, do they agree with that statement? It is the sun. I want those 3 honorable doctors hold a press conference and say it is the sun. Because if we believe you, how many more would have died? Right? How many more would have died? You see, Madam Speaker, we believe in science and communication. They believe in voodoo, sun. We believe in strategy. They believe in VOOPs. We believe in leadership. They believe in VAPs. We believe in patriotism. They believe in Vaikivai. That is what the Honorable Kamla Prasad Bisesa has to offer this country. Voodoo, VOOPs, VAPs, and Vaikivai. But the PNM offers you science, communication on a daily basis, leadership, and patriotism, and led by a Prime Minister who is a scientist above all, Madam Speaker, the damage done to this country by the statement of the Honorable Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, where she rubbishes the work of healthcare workers in saying the reason why we did well is because of the sun, heaps scorn on the healthcare workers who work day and night in this country. It heaps scorn on the activities of the chief medical officer. You don't want to thank me, you don't want to recognize me, that is fine. But at least recognize the Herculean efforts of the chief medical officer, officers at the Ministry of Health, and doctors and nurses. Because you see, saying it is because of the sun is not only dangerous to the psyche of healthcare workers, it is dangerous to the population, Madam Speaker, and I'll tell you why. It tells people that go out there, be reckless, have COVID parties, congregate in 5 or more, don't wear a mask, and the sun will save you. That is what is so medically dangerous about that statement. It tells people, go out there, be reckless, and the sun will save you. The sun will save you. Let me tell you another piece of medical advice we got from the UNC. I was disappointed and disturbed. Again, you want to attack me as a politician, fine. But when you attack the chief medical officer, who is a public servant, as the Honorable Kamala Prasad-Bissessar did, and now the Honorable Fuad Khan. Fuad Khan, Dr. Fuad Khan, member for Barataria Sanwan, was interviewed by TV6. And I'm paraphrasing, but I'm sure I get the gist of it right. He said the advice given by the Minister of Health and the Chief Medical Officer is foolish about the wearing of masks. Could you imagine that? The wearing of masks is recognized worldwide as a way to stop the transmission of COVID. A medical doctor on that side, the same employees we want to protect, to have the economy open back up. Could you imagine a former Minister of Health is saying the Chief Medical Officer and the Minister of Health are foolish in recommending the use of masks? When that is coupled with the Honorable Kamala Prasad-Bissessar's statement, it is a good thing. Yes?
While I understand you're using the word honorable, I'd suggest you refer to members in here by...
I apologize.
Yes.
The Honorable Dr. Fuad Khan, member for Barataria, Sanwan. And again, the member for Caroni Central is going to follow me, Caroni East. Dr. Tim Gopi Singh, the honorable member. Tell this chamber whether you agree with your colleague that the wearing of masks is foolish. So you have 2 answers to give. Madam Speaker, in the few minutes that I have left, I just want to put in context how Trinidad and Tobago did with COVID-19. And I'm going to quote a series of statements by independent persons and agencies that speak to the economic and health response of this government. The World Bank, a 2020 World Bank report entitled, "The Economy in the Time of COVID-19, the Economy," claimed that developing countries in the Caribbean, in particular Trinidad and Tobago, was more prepared for the crisis than a lot of its Caribbean counterparts. That's the World Bank, not the PNM. European Union. The EU delegation wishes to commend the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the measured manner in which it has been proactively managing the challenges posed by the global coronavirus crisis and for the activities by the Ministry of Health in preparation for a possible surge in the number of persons that carry the COVID-19. That is what the EU said. Oxford University records and compares governmental measures in response to the virus On May 1st, 2020, an assessment by Oxford University ranked Trinidad and Tobago as the #1 country in the world in implementing COVID-19 knockdown rollback checklists, which will stimulate economic activities. Locally, Market Facts and Opinion report of 4th May. The report published on May 4th, 2020 by MFO found overall that citizens were satisfied with government's response to the virus, and the government has received high marks for the handling of the COVID-19 and the economic and social fallout of the pandemic, which is what this motion is about. So this is not the PNM saying this. This is a man in the street responding to an MFO survey that they are giving the government high marks for its handling of the economic and social fallout from the pandemic, because there will be economic and social fallout. Former independent Senator Ramesh Diosaran, in an article in the Newsday of April 12, 2020, 4 months now, Dr. Rowley, National Security Minister Stuart Young, yes, my colleague, and I want to thank my colleague, Minister Stuart Young, for being a co-pilot with me on this journey. The country may not appreciate you. Many people may not appreciate you, but my brother, you and I have worked well, and I thank you. Health Minister Terence Dayal Singh, and of course, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Roshan Parasram. This is Dr. Roshan Parasram, who was called foolish by the member for Barataria Sawa for recommending the use of masks. This is Dr. Roshan Parasram, who was accused of hiding data by the honorable member for Siparia Kamla Prasad Bisesa. Are carrying out their respective responsibilities with effective coordination. To encourage, I give Dr. Rowley and his frontline team 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. You will never hear that from my colleagues. A former independent senator. This is for accountability, resource management, public assistance, and disease control. End of quote. Mr. Rafiq Shah, commended, and he says, early o'clock, and Mr. Rafiq Shah is no friend of any government, including the PNM. Early o'clock, the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, decided to lead the charge from the front. That is my Prime Minister, whom I have the honor and pleasure to serve, because he believes in science, not sunshine. In a crisis like this pandemic, people in leadership positions are put to the test in the most severe way. They say sometimes leadership reveals character, or leadership forges character. In this COVID environment, the leadership of Dr. Keith Rowley was revealed for all to see. And also, the leadership of the Honorable Kamla Prasad Bisesa, MP for Siparia, was seen because she believes in sunshine. Madam Speaker, how much more time do I have, please?
About 32 seconds.
Thank you very much. So, Madam Speaker, as I close, I just want to say that this motion is hypocritical, it is dangerous, it is unpatriotic, just like the UNC, and I condemn it to the dustbin of history. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Member for Caroni East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am pleased to join my colleagues earlier on in support of the motion raised by and moved by the member for Caroni Central. But let me first respond to some of the questions that were raised by the Honorable Minister of Health, the member for St. Joseph. First of all, let me just indicate to him that the hunt is on. The hunt is on, Honorable Minister. And I want to quote directly from an article on the media, social media, from https://medicalexpress.com/news 2020-04. Sunlight, coronavirus, quickly, scientists, HTML. And the article says, sunlight destroys coronavirus quickly, says US scientists. So let me repeat that. Sunlight destroys coronavirus quickly, says US scientists. The new coronavirus is quickly destroyed by sunlight. The new coronavirus is quickly destroyed by sunlight. medicalexpress.com. Madam Speaker,
Honourable members, I would like to hear the member for Caroni East, and I would also remind members that to watch their language, it is not parliamentary to engage in certain kinds of language. Member for Caroni East.
thank you. Madam Speaker, I listened attentively to the Minister of Health, and I want to put forward the issue of this government's bungling the management of the human aspect of the COVID-19 crisis to the distress of citizens, a large number of whom without work and struggle to put food on the table. Everyone will remember Her Excellency the President proclaimed at the end of January that the COVID-19 is a public health emergency. The WHO President declared the virus as a global emergency at the end of January. We heard nothing from the government then, Madam Speaker, except the Minister of Health saying that carnival must go on. Nothing official. There was a meeting of CARICOM prime ministers sometime around February, yet nothing still from the Trinidad and Tobago government. For the first time in March, a statement from the Prime Minister came in Parliament, and unfortunately, he tried to accuse us of not allowing him to speak and not wanting to hear him speak. And he knows that was untrue, because we became a little tired of repeated times by the government to waive the standing order, from which they allocated 10 minutes to even more. There had been repeated requests, and we were tired of acceding to that. The government was ill-prepared and late in their decision-making, fumbling along to put processes and institutions in a state of readiness. Madam Speaker, I want to say that the government and the Ministry of Health had no line of sight in the full magnitude of the situation. They were reactive rather than proactive. Their approach always benchmarked on what was going on when looking at CNN. So they took example from what was going on in CNN. They were fumbling to put processes and institutions in place. They were deficient and restrictive, and had restrictive measures and criteria for testing. You must have association with someone who came in from abroad. You must have 2 of the symptoms. These were the criteria that they used for testing. And that was restrictive, Madam Speaker. It was shown that the rest of the world did not adopt those criteria. And they adopted those criteria because they knew fully well they did not have enough test kits to do the sampling which was required to be done. So they had absolutely inadequate testing, non-functioning of the PCR machines at hospitals. So that's why they knew they couldn't do more testing. They relied solely on CARPHA, which had only 3,000 kits for the entire Caribbean. Still up to today, there are promises being made by the Minister of Health that more kits were coming in from China. They will expand the testing. Hospitals will do the testing. No hospital is doing any testing up to today. He spoke about the private labs seeking accreditation. Still to date, not one of these private labs has been accredited. They speak about community testing. The Prime Minister said that they will wait for 2 more weeks and do about 700 more community tests. I want to indicate, Madam Speaker, no community testing has been done. The testing which had been done were done from health centers, and specific health centers were identified. And the minister must tell us whether what I'm saying is not true. There was no community testing. The testing was done from identified specific health centers. So, Madam Speaker, the decisions being made today and by the Honorable Prime Minister and his team, based on testing, it's an unscientific epidemiologic approach, which is guiding their decision-making for opening up of the country. We should have had by now almost 20,000 tests so far, benchmarked against international standards. We are 0.08%, highly unsatisfactory. Britain is testing nearly 1,500 citizens per million population per day. They're testing 100,000 per day for their 65 million. United States has done over 10 million tests out of the 330 million, which is 3%, nearly 40 times more than we have done in Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, their isolation and quarantine have been absolute failures and have been national disasters. The Cora Tier 1 facility for isolation was shown to be unhealthy, unsanitary, feces on the floor, improper separation of male and female patients in Cora, causing emotional pain and suffering and mental scarring of patients, and sometimes to the extent that people began to think very negative in terms of what was happening to their lives. The Balandra situation, 14 people were quarantined in one room without ventilation, and which was causing cross-infection amongst the people quarantined there. The Brooklyn village, there were no doors on the toilets, cockroach infestation. Madam Speaker, even in the worst of situations, we should have been able to treat and manage patients with some degree of dignity. Many of those who were quarantined suffered emotional pain, and they complained that their dignity was robbed from them. Many people thought this is a virtual lockup if you are tested positive. So if you're tested positive, you have to go to Balandra, go to Cora, or go to Brooklyn earlier on. And hundreds of patients or citizens today with mild to moderate symptoms, I want the national population to listen to this issue. I believe personally, and I have been asked by many patients, and many of my colleagues, senior colleagues, have been asked by many citizens about what we advise them to do. Many called and said that they were having mild to moderate symptoms. They described the symptoms. And when you advise them to go to the centers which are dealing with it, they said, I am not going. I prefer to die at home, because they are afraid of being what they virtually call lock-up. So hundreds of citizens with mild to moderate symptoms are still afraid of being locked up and are not coming forward for testing. And we don't know whether the true state in Trinidad and Tobago is really zero, because there are serious fears, emotional trauma, and apprehension by many, many citizens. As one of my classmates from South Trinidad, who is a senior medical doctor and a specialist, and let me just remind the Minister of Finance that we query doctors on this side, 3 query doctors. We are full-fledged specialists in our field, very well recognized not only nationally, but internationally. And together with my 45 years experience, Dr. Fuad Khan, 35 years experience, and Dr. Bodo, nearly 30 years experience, We have over 120 years' experience as top-ranking specialists in Trinidad and Tobago and in the Caribbean. So let that put to rest the query Minister of Finance, who have absolutely no knowledge about finance, but put there as Minister of Finance. So, Madam Speaker, what is happening internationally? People have been going forward willingly and voluntarily to be tested. The Minister of Health said that random testing is a thing of the past, and it should, and people, they don't need to be doing that type of testing. Madam Speaker, it seems as though that the established criteria for selecting places for quarantine must be a PNM supporter, and the establishment must belong to a PNM supporter. The government, which constantly speaks of proper procurement, leased the property in the Sangre Grande area for $315,000 as a step-down facility without any transparency and accountability. When there was public outrage at the cost, the country was told by the Chief Medical Officer of Health that he had requested an official report on the procurement measures, and that was the last the country heard of that matter. Nothing else has come forward. Madam Speaker, I want to proffer that frontline nursing and medical personnel for days and even for a few weeks did not possess sufficient personal protective equipment and masks to protect them from infection. They were fearful for their lives by becoming infected as a result of lack of equipment. They voiced their serious concerns and apprehensions very quietly. Hundreds of these personnel worked in those difficult situations, and all the nursing, medical, security, paraprofessionals must be recognized for their tremendous service to the people of this nation, with their lives at risk, as shown by so many frontline professionals who unfortunately lost their lives attending to patients. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Health speaks about a parallel system, and he boasted about a parallel system operating. And he began to parrot the same thing, what was being said internationally. Internationally, you would hear the guys in the United States speaking about a parallel system. But that was only talk, no action. The hospital clinics and the elective surgeries were shut down. Hospital clinics patients were not seen. No system was established so that their chronic diabetes, hypertension, and even cancer patients were being treated and seen. Their disease processes were worsening from lack of care and attention. No clinic visits. Patients with ulcerating legs were becoming gangrenous over the 3 months, with possible resultant amputations in this country, where over 500 leg amputations are done on an annual basis. And patients with cancers, their suffering continued. They were being punished, and cancers were worsening from those who had early-stage disease, from stage 1 to stage 3 and stage 4, some becoming almost terminal. Madam Speaker, in this country, about 12,000 surgical procedures are done electively annually. And in that 3-month period, almost 3,000 elective surgery operations involving breast cancers, bowel cancers, ovarian cancers, prostate cancers, etc., were postponed, some requiring open heart surgery and had to wait, and some died while waiting. And that is the parallel system that the Minister of Health spoke about gleefully, that they had operational. And the Minister and the Ministry of Health and the government have to answer for the loss of lives of these people who did not receive their treatment. So this parallel system has been a total failure and serious confusion while patients were dying or near death. You know what is hypocritical of this, the work of this government and the speeches of this government? Suddenly, after 4.5 years, Couva Children's Hospital had 250 beds to house COVID patients. Where did it come from? 15 ventilators, MRI machines, So this is the same hospital that they say couldn't open 4.5 years before, but they suddenly find it when the COVID virus came in, they opened it. So it was functional and operation. For 4.5 years, they kept this place closed, depriving thousands of children and adults of their very life-saving medical and hospital care. Instead, hundreds of patients lining up on the corridors, in the emergency departments, of trolleys and so on at the hospitals, and some dying while waiting for treatment. The deaths of scores of patients in this country is on the hands of this government. The Arima Hospital is now ready for use, thanks to the People Partnership government. Point Fortin Hospital ready this month, thanks to the PP government. The South Debe campus was able to house patients for quarantine. The PP government constructed it. The Aquatic Center housing patients for quarantine, all built by the Kamla Prasad Bisasa People's Partnership government. You must say thank you, this PNM government. All these infrastructural projects were constructed during Mrs. Bisasa's time. Madam Speaker, the government has been inconsistent and discriminatory in its policy of lifting the border lockdown to facilitate the re-entry of some citizens. Many people see that policy as prejudicial and inequitable. The reopening of the national economy is done in a haphazard manner, and you would have seen on the newspapers many people commenting on it without this thought, without strategic planning and logical thinking. Madam Speaker, 20 minutes is not enough time for me to speak about the other issues. But I want the Minister of Finance, I want to respond to him and say, 32 billion he has borrowed already so far. And this Dr. Keith Rowley-led government has spent over $270 billion so far, and nothing to represent the expenditure. The country debt has gone to 124 billion. The debt to GDP has moved from 42% to 65%. The GDP is falling continuously every year from 2015, the deficit budgeting. And there has been regular downgrading by the rating agencies and negative growth annually. This year is expected to be 4.5 negative. And he speaks about the HSF. We moved the HSF from 3.5 billion to 5.6 billion US so that the PNM government could now find funds inside there. It moved from 5.6 to 6.5 because of the trustees that the People's Partnership government put in place to manage that fund so that they invested properly and was able to retrieve this money so that the PNM government can get the money that they say that they're taking from it. Madam Speaker, as I close, our honorable political leader, the member for Siparia, Mrs. Bisasa, was the one who took on the mantle of true leadership in this virus. All the people who were suffering, she made attempts to feed all of them. She provided almost 60,000 masks and unfailingly lobbied for businesses to be opened in a safe, strategic manner. It was she who rose to the challenge, while those on the other side shut down our borders to our suffering citizens and engaged in some of the most destabilizing conduct in our nation. But now is not the time to debate that. We will have another time. So the People's National Movement government could have done this together with us, yet you chose for political mileage and spite to go it alone. Now, because you refuse to stand together with us and the rest of Trinidad and Tobago, our country is falling apart. So, Madam Speaker, when the Honorable Prime Minister when the Honorable Leader of the Opposition asked the Prime Minister for us to join in coming together so that we can do the work for the country, she indicated that because we as opposition is a key national stakeholder responsible for 18 parliamentary constituencies throughout the country, as well as 7 regional corporations at the local government level, which places more than half the population under our direct administrative and legislative purview. So in our nation's history, with good sense and faithful adherence to our democratic principles.
Member for Caroni,
Yes.
your speaking time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We have managed.
Honorable members, I have been advised that there's agreement on tea, so now will be a convenient time, and we will return at 5 p.m.